So this is a really interesting story that we have here. Potentially shows the more human side of Joe Biden. Biden disparages Netanyahu in private, but hasn't significantly changed U.S. policy towards Israel and Gaza. President Joe Biden has been venting his frustration in recent private conversations, some of them with campaign donors, over his inability to persuade Israel to change its military tactics in the Gaza Strip. And he has named Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as the primary obstacle, according to 5 people directly familiar with his comments. Biden has said he is trying to get Israel to agree to a ceasefire, but Netanyahu is, quote, giving him hell and is impossible to deal with, said the people familiar with Biden's comments, who all asked not to be named. He just feels like this is enough, one of the people said of the views expressed by Biden. It has to stop. Biden has in recent weeks spoken privately about Netanyahu, a leader he has known for decades, with a candor that has surprised some of those on the receiving end of his comments, people familiar with them said. His descriptions of his dealings with Netanyahu are peppered with contemptuous references to Netanyahu as, quote, this guy, these people said. And in at least 3 instances, Biden has called Netanyahu, quote, an asshole, according to 3 of the people directly familiar with his comments. Asked about Biden's private comments about Netanyahu, a spokesperson for the National Security Council said in a statement that the 2 leaders have a respectful relationship. The president has been clear where he disagrees with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but this is a decades-long relationship that is respectful in public and in private, the spokesperson said. Since he embraced Netanyahu in a bear hug during a visit to Israel after a Hamas terrorist attack killed 1,200 people on October 7th, Biden has grown steadily more frustrated with the rising Palestinian death toll in Gaza and Netanyahu's reluctance to pursue a long-term peace agreement. The bluntness of Biden's private, unfiltered reflections on Netanyahu, as well as Israel's premier's failure to shift tactics in Gaza, suggests that the dynamic between the 2 leaders could be nearing an inflection point. So this is interesting because it's always frustrating when you find out that in private politicians will be saying one thing, but then when you look at policy, something entirely different. I think many people in the U.S. government are recognizing that Israel is becoming more and more unpopular globally. More and more countries, more and more activists are speaking out against Israel's actions against the Palestinians. There hasn't been policy change, but there has been change in perspective, change in people's belief systems over time. And I think, as I said in another video, the activism against Israel's treatment of the Palestinians really does warm your heart. It's amazing how many people are being energized and moved to action. But Biden needs to step it up if he's so sorry. He needs to step it up if he's actually serious about these private comments. If he's actually serious about changing about a ceasefire. Needless to say, America isn't Israel, so obviously Israel's an independent actor to some extent. But if the U.S. were more harsh with Israel, and if it were giving them less aid, we have a major sway with the Israeli government. If we put our foot down, then a big hurdle is overcome, and more progress can be made with the situation. A big part of the reason the situation has gone on so long is because of the U.S.'s support of Israel. And just to, give you some general updates about information on the ground, Gaza's death toll mounts as negotiators cite progress on a ceasefire deal. Palestinian death toll from an Israeli hostage rescue operation in a key Gaza city rose to 74 on Tuesday, officials in the war-ravaged enclave said, as the warring sides appear to have made progress towards a deal that aims to bring about a ceasefire and free hostages held by Hamas. The raid took place early Monday in Rafah, a city on the southern edge of the Gaza Strip, where 1.4 million Palestinians have fled to escape fighting elsewhere in the Israel-Hamas war. Women and children were among those killed in the airstrike, Palestinian officials said. The overall Palestinian death toll from the war in Gaza has surpassed 28,000 people. I'll repeat that. The overall Palestinian death toll from the war in Gaza has surpassed 28,000 people, according to the health ministry in Gaza. A quarter of Gaza's residents are starving. The war began with Hamas's assault and, this information we've already covered. Israel says about 100 hostages remain in Hamas captivity, while Hamas is holding the remains of roughly 30 people that were either killed on October 7th or died in captivity. And currently, South Africa launches an urgent request from the top UN court over Israel's targeting of Rafah. U.S. Senate passes a $95.3 billion aid package for Ukraine and Israel, but faith in the House is uncertain. And then Biden says key elements of the Gaza deal are on the table as he meets with Jordan's King Abdul. But the death toll just keeps mounting, and it kind of makes you sick to feel like, we're just sort of sitting here going about our lives as normal, going to Starbucks, going to school, going to work, when so many people are starving to death. They don't have running water. They're being killed in bombings and raids. And Joe Biden, he has so much more power and influence than he thinks he does. But this is how American foreign policy works. It never changes until it does, if you know what I mean. I mean, we stubbornly go about the same thing until something changes, there's some incentive to do something else, so then boom, we're off and running in another direction. I desperately hope that, a ceasefire is around the corner. But Joe Biden's not doing enough. Even if in private he's had it with Netanyahu and he's insulting him and whatnot, if that doesn't change into policy, then it's meaningless. It's meaningless word salad. So Joe Biden, do better. We need to stop these atrocities, and we need to stop them now.